Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar for the Governor's School for the Arts, where we are going to be talking all about our visual art program. We're really glad you're here today. My name is Nick Cobalt. I am the Executive Director for the Governor's School for the Arts. And the first thing I want to ask you to do is to jump in the chat. We'd love to hear who's out there and where you're from. So say hi, share your first name and maybe what county you're coming from. And then you all can get a sense of who is in here as well. Hi, April from Greenville. Ashton from Nelson County. Hey, Lily from Harrison County. Hey, Julie, Jill, Lucy. Hi, everyone. Clark County, awesome. Hey, Izzy. Hey, Carl. Beautiful. As we go through the webinar today, please feel free to keep engaging with each other in the chat. We want you all to have a sense of who you are as well, and know that we're here for you beyond this webinar as well if you all have any other questions. So I'm also going to launch a poll real quick to learn a little bit more about who you all are. So we're asking you questions here about if you're a high school student, a parent, a teacher, and then we know that we're here to talk about visual art today, but let us know if you're interested in other art forms as well, and if you've attended a GSA 101 info session before, and if you've applied to GSA before. Again, just getting to know a little bit more about you. I'll keep that open for just another moment. All right, let's see what we got here. So it looks like almost everyone here today is not only a high school student, but one that is currently eligible to apply for GSA or in the 10th or 11th grade. So good for you for taking your GSA application into your own hands. Seriously, one of the best things you can do for yourself is attend one of these webinars in real time. It's great to have a couple parents here. Thank you for supporting young artists. We're here for you too, parents, throughout this process. And it looks like in addition to visual art, we got maybe some architects or designers, some dancers, some actors, some filmmakers and photographers. That's awesome. Some of you have attended one of these before, and a couple of you have even applied to GSA before. So welcome back. We're glad to have you. And for those of you who are new to the process, that's what we're here to do, is to make sure that you have as much information as possible. So how this is going to work today is first, I am going to give you a brief overview presentation about GSA. It's going to be pretty quick, pretty high level. If you've attended GSA 101, one of our webinars, or reviewed a recording of one of our GSA 101 webinars, this is going to be a very, very condensed version of that. So hang tight for a couple minutes. If you haven't attended or viewed a recording of one of our GSA 101 webinars, where we aren't talking about a specific art form, but rather we're talking about the program more globally and big picture, really encourage you to either attend one of those. We have one or two of those left, I think maybe just one. And then we also have recordings of them on our YouTube channel. Like, it's going to go a lot more in depth than what I'm about to show you. But really briefly, let's cover some big picture points about what GSA is, and then we'll introduce today's guest and talk a little bit more about the visual art process specifically. All right. Beautiful. Okay, so you all should be able to see my presentation now. And let's talk a little bit about GSA overall. So if you aren't already aware, today's session is a part of a larger series of GSA virtual info sessions that we're hosting throughout the autumn for applicants, parents, and educators. So we hope you'll take advantage of these many resources to learn more, ask questions, and connect to the GSA team. So you heard me mention that GSA 101 webinar earlier, and I was wrong. We still do have two more this fall. So we've had two on September 29th and October 11th. Recordings of those are available on our YouTube, but you can also sign up and register for our GSA 101 on November 14th or December 1st. Again, highly recommend you pair that with watching today's webinar. On October 6th, the application portal opened. So it has been open for just over a month now. So I bet some of you have started your GSA application. And if you haven't already, you should be pretty well prepared to start it after today. And we strongly encourage you to do that as soon as possible. In addition to the applicant portal being open on October 6th, we also published our applicant guides. We're going to take a look at the applicant guide for visual art in a lot of detail today. We also released a video showing you what it's like to actually fill out an application. So if you're more of a visual learner and you want to know what that technology is going to look like, highly recommend you check out that video. And then you know all about these because you're at one. Throughout October and November, we've been having these art form specific webinars. So for those of you who are interested in another art form, if you missed the art form specific webinar for that other art form, again, recordings on our YouTube, be sure to check it out. Remember, these info sessions, like I said, are not the only way to get information about the GSA application process. You can and probably should contact GSA with any kind of questions at the GSA helpline, which is listed here, 502-566-5192, or at gsainfo@kentuckyperformingarts.org. And remember, there are no scary adults at GSA waiting to judge you or anything like that. But we really, truly love chatting with our applicants. You're the reason that we're here. And it's not only our pleasure, but our job to help you out. We hope you'll follow us on social media as well. So you can see our Facebook name and our Instagram handle here at KYGSA. So we'll see you on the socials too. All right, let's quickly review some information about the GSA summer program itself. It's a 3-week residential summer program that takes place on a college campus. Students can attend GSA for one of 9 art forms. And the program is completely tuition free, so students attend at no cost to themselves. Students are immersed in an intense, challenging, and exhilarating learning environment in one of those 9 art forms. And while each student focuses on the one art form that they are attending GSA for, interdisciplinary collaboration is a major component of the program. So that means that students are exposed to and engaged with art forms other than their own. If you haven't heard, we recently doubled the size of the summer program. So that's for 3 years starting this past summer. So through the summer of 2024, we're actually able to have 2 of our summer sessions, meaning we're going to work with over 500 students each summer. And that's thanks to funding from the Kentucky Department of Education. So we're very grateful to them to have doubled the size of the program through 2024. There's literally never been a better time to be a GSA applicant than there is now. But we can only consider you if you complete your application. Speaking of the application, you have to currently be a sophomore or a junior to apply. Note that we do not ask for your GPA, ACT, or SAT score at any point during the application process. And you can apply for up to 2 art forms. You can only attend GSA for 1, but you can throw your name in the hat for 2 art forms. There's an application fee, and that's $30 or $35 total if you're applying in 2 art forms. But that fee is waived by the click of a button in the application for anyone who qualifies for free and reduced lunch. Well, we're thrilled to speak with you today about the visual art program, and we're confident that this session will be helpful. Remember, it's not going to be 100% comprehensive, and there's going to be some other very important resources you should utilize to learn more about the program and at the application. And all of those are going to be available on our website, KentuckyGSA.org. That website is your friend. On that website, again, you're going to find that applicant guide. Make sure that you review that applicant guide nice and early. Maybe some of you have already looked at it before today. Again, we're going to go through that in detail today, but you're going to need to go through it in more detail after today too yourself. And if you haven't already started organizing your materials or prepping them or creating them, now's the time. Go ahead and get started. With that applicant guide in your hand and the application portal, there's nothing stopping you from initiating your GSA application and completing it nice and early before this January 8th deadline. So the application is due by the end of day on January 8th. And note, that's a Sunday, and our office is not staffed on weekends. So Friday, January 6th is the last day to call and email us with questions. That being said, do yourself a favor and do not wait until the last minute to upload your application. Don't wait until January 6th to have this final questions. We'll be standing by and glad to chat with you if you do. But the phone system's probably going to be backed up. The application portal will run slower because a lot of people are going to be uploading their materials at once. So do yourself a favor. We really encourage you to get that uploaded at least 2 weeks in advance, if not sooner. But it is not due until January 8th. Students will learn if they've advanced to the second and final round of our adjudication process on February 17th. So that's when you find out whether or not you've advanced to a second and final round. And that final round involves an audition or a review, in visual arts case, a review that will take place on March 17th and 18th. So our final round auditions and reviews are going to be hybrid. So some art forms will have live in-person auditions at the University of Kentucky in Lexington on March 17th and 18th. Some art forms are going to be virtual and take place on Zoom. Visual art is a virtual audition or a review art form. So if you are a finalist for visual art, that will take place on Zoom. Again, more details in the applicant guide. We're going to announce the GSA class of 2023, as well as alternates who are placed on the wait list on April 14th. And those students are invited to attend one of our 2 GSA sessions. So you don't see these dates on your screen, but I am going to read them out loud. Our first GSA session is June 11th to July 1st, 2023. Again, June 11th to July 1st, 2023. Our second session is July 9th to July 29th, 2023. So students are selected to attend one of those sessions. They are assigned, and visual art does take place at both of those sessions. If you're applying for architecture and design, that only takes place during session 1. If you're applying for dance, that only takes place during session 2. But all other art forms at those sessions, and those sessions take place on the campus of the University of Kentucky in Lexington. So that is where you will be living and residing during the GSA program. All right, so again, that's a quick overview. I should have mentioned, if you have questions during this presentation, please feel free to put them in the Q&A feature in here in Zoom. If you could try and put your questions in the Q&A feature instead of the chat, that'll be helpful for us. And then we'll come back to those questions at the end and or pause at the end to see if you have any questions. So without further ado, I'm now going to invite today's guest to join us here on Zoom. Joining us today is Matthew Gaddie, and I'm going to let him introduce himself. Matthew Gaddie is on our visual art faculty here at GSA. He actually currently chairs one of our visual art sessions this past summer, has been with us for a number of years. He's also a GSA alum. I call him Gaddie. I'll let him introduce himself as much, however he'd like. But Gaddie, it's good to have you here. And why don't you tell everyone a little bit about who you are? Okay, so yeah, I'm Gaddie. I am a, I think 98, God, a long time ago, graduate of Governor School, and kind of carried with me for most of my life a sense of gratitude and almost debt to the program, because I'm one of those people who can honestly say that the program changed my life. I was in a totally different trajectory, kind of applied for Governor School on a thin hope, as many of you probably feel like you are, you know, and was lucky enough to get in, and found out that I was with my people for the first time in my life, and went back and worked as an RA for a couple years. That's where Nick and I first met. Nick was actually in my first RA group when I was an RA. I actually went back to graduate school in my 30s to get my MFA so that I could maybe hopefully one day apply for the job at Governor School, and was lucky enough in 2018 that the job opened up. And I was working as a full-time studio artist at the time, and jumped in and started my teaching career at Governor School. Once again, found a way to be indebted to Governor School, and just now found out today that I will be working next year full-time at Hanover, continuing to teach, and going to continue to do my summer duty at Governor School, and just really feel blessed to be here, and hopefully I can help shed some light on this process. Awesome, Gaddie. Well, thanks for being here with us. And Gaddie is an amazing resource. He is really central in helping us design the visual art application process. So y'all are here with a man to talk to about visual art. So we're just going to dive in, and the way that this is going to go is I'm going to share my screen again, and we're going to go through that visual art applicant guide piece by piece. So I'll talk about something that's in the applicant guide, and then we'll turn to Gaddie to see what his input or feedback is on maybe the best practice for applicants, any tips he has, or maybe just more information. Here we go. All right, so this document that you see on my screen is hopefully familiar to lots of you. If you go to our website and look for the applicant guides and you click on the visual art applicant guide, this is what should pull up. So it's an 11-page document. Don't let that length intimidate you because it covers a lot. And the first thing that we find here is the program description. So I'm not going to read everything in this document to you, but I am going to read this verbatim. So this basically is an idea of what we study in visual art, a broad description of what we study in visual art at GSA. So you know kind of what you're getting yourself into by applying. GSA's visual art program includes studio classes in 3 areas of concentration: drawing and painting, sculpture and ceramics, and traditional printmaking. Students attend studios in all 3 areas throughout the program. Special workshops are conducted by distinguished visiting artists. Students view and learn about the work of these artists, as well as that of their own GSA faculty. Instructors and students critique and reflect on their works in progress individually and in groups, both in oral and written formats. Studio sessions are augmented by field trips and slide presentations. Students learn about writing artist statements, art professions and careers, and portfolio preparation for college applications. A juried gallery exhibition of student work is displayed on the final day of the program, and other student work is presented in an open house format in the rest of the studios. New to the applicant guide this year, we've also included some photos here from the program this past summer. So I know you all are visual folks to visual art applicants. So just to give you a sense of some imagery from the program, but I'll pause there. And Gaddie, why don't you tell us a little bit more about the visual art program at the summer program and what students should plan on experiencing?
Yeah, I think, over the years, we've had lots of discussions about exactly the format of the program in general. But I would say the best way to describe it is we are really, at least for our session, for sure. And I think the second session shares a similar philosophy. But we kind of consider ourselves like a classics foundation program. We really, because of the wide nature of all the different kinds of students that we pull from all over the state, it's really important for us to try and lay some really firm foundation, both in how to build concepts and in what we call like practical hard skills, so that as students move on to hopefully, have some interest in moving on to college, that we really feel like we lay a good firm foundation over those 3 weeks, and the students are able to take those skills into college. And I'll just talk about my particular field as a good example. With ceramics, we have some students who've had 2 or 3 semesters of ceramics at their local high schools, and we have a lot of students, a large majority of students, have never touched clay. So I've got to build a curriculum that somehow addresses both kind of ends of the spectrum. And I teach a very specific type of ceramic technique that is intended to teach you kind of everything you need to know, basics about ceramics, so that no matter where you go to college, you're able to use that basic knowledge to then grow from. And I think that that's true for our printmaking, our painting and drawing, and our sculpture department. All try to get those kind of basics. Now, within that, we're going to push those that are ready to go into more kind of conceptual fields, but realize that maybe not everybody is in the same place. And we really try and meet the students kind of where they're at. Does that answer that, Nick?
Yeah, and one thing I want to re-emphasize that you sort of touched on, Gaddie, is, we see here that our visual art program is about drawing, painting, sculpture and ceramics, and traditional printmaking. But we definitely don't expect our students to have had a lot of experience in all of those areas. In fact, many of our students might be doing some of those mediums for the first time at GSA, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think that's part of our mission is, to serve the entire community of the state of Kentucky. And so, yeah, we're going to have a lot of students who have never been in a place where they've had access to presses and pottery kilns and the really vast amount of different materials we use in the sculpture studio, and even upstairs in drawing and painting, which probably everybody is going to come in with a little bit of drawing and painting for sure. A lot of students have never used oils before. And so that's a big part of our program, is to introduce, materials. So it's kind of, no matter where you come from and where you're at, we're gonna find a way to provide you a rich service for those 3 weeks.
That's awesome. Thanks, Gaddie. All right. So again, if you have questions at all about the summer program, feel free to ask them. I'm going to jump back over to our applicant guide, and we're going to move on to the next part. So you'll see it says here, part 2, preliminary round application requirements. So this section 2 here is everything that you need to submit by that January 8th deadline. So we come down here, there's going to be a summary of each of these areas, and then later on in the document, it talks about each of these in more detail. So 2 recommendation forms, a personal short essay, personal question video, some art form specific questions, portfolio images, portfolio cover sheet, and images of sketchbook pages and or 3D experiments. So let's dive into each of these a little bit more. So you'll see the first section here is about the recommendation forms. Do this first. So when you log into your GSA application, you're essentially going to give us your name, maybe some very basic information about you, and then we're pretty quickly going to ask you to identify 2 recommenders. And you're going to actually be identifying their names and their email address, and that's all you're going to have to do. From there, you click a button, and then an auto-generated email sends them the recommendation form to their email address directly. So it's really, really important that you put in the correct email address for your recommender. So throughout this section of the applicant guide, which I'm not going to read to you, but I am just going to scroll through it so that you get a sense of how much information there is about your recommenders. Do take a chance to read that. Some tips I have for your recommenders, and then I'll turn it over to Gaddie, is 1, check in with your recommenders before you list them. Let them know that you're applying to GSA. You'd like to list them as a recommender. Tell them all the reasons why you think that they should give you a glowing recommendation. That's totally allowed for you to advocate for yourself like that, and show gratitude to them, and then make sure you've got their correct email address. You know which email address they want you to use, and then follow up with them once you've clicked that button, just so that they know to be looking for that recommendation form in their inbox. Again, that recommendation form is just going to essentially be a short questionnaire about you as a student, as an artist, as a member of a community. For your recommenders, it used to be that we asked you to choose a teacher and a school administrator, and we don't do that anymore. You're welcome to use a teacher or a school administrator for either of your recommenders. But what we say now is to choose 2 people who know you, preferably as an artist if possible. So if somebody knows you and your artistic work, and that could be a teacher, that could be, a sports coach or a youth minister or something like that. We encourage you to use at least one of your recommenders in that way, someone who knows you in that way. But we recognize not everyone does that, right? Some people, their artistic practice is very private. They don't share it with maybe a lot of the mentors in their life, or a lot of adults in their life. So in that case, try to choose someone who knows you as a student or as a community member. It could be a math teacher or someone at an organization you volunteer for. Gaddie, is there anything else that you'd like to add about how you use the recommendation forms, and any tips you have for students as they work with their recommenders?
No, I think you hit on it. When we made this adjustment a few years back, because we recognize that this part of the application, for better or for worse, is a little bit out of students' control in some ways. And so this part of it, I would not get overly stressed about. It's important, but not get overly stressed about, because you put this responsibility onto an adult, and then they kind of do as they do. And in years past, sometimes teachers and administrators at the school are just overwhelmed with these kind of jobs that they have to do, and so we weren't getting a really high quality response. So I think the thing is here is to try and find somebody who knows you well and can speak to your particulars and just for me personally, I love to hear about people's work ethic and their willingness to be part of a group and work well with others, and kind of have the personality traits that we're going to be looking for when we're putting this team together. That's the best way I can describe it. It's kind of like the all-star art team for 2023. And we're kind of, we're looking at this and we're kind of the coaching staff, if you will, and we're trying to put together this all-star team. So we're using those letters of recommendation to say, hey, this kid is a real hard worker, works well with others, is humble, is open to criticism, all those kind of things that make us want to say, yeah, that's the kind of team member we want. So, but having said that, I would not get overly stressed about it, because we recognize on our end that you can't make people do stuff. And like I said, in years past, they were not high quality. So just try and find somebody that you have a lot of faith in that's going to give you a high quality recommendation.
And I'll add in there that if your recommender takes a while to submit the form, we do follow up with them and remind them to submit the form. But it is something that they have to do on their end. So that's why we tell you to get it out of the way first. And you actually have to do that first in your application before you can move on. So that gives your recommenders plenty of time to complete that recommendation form by January 8th. So moving on to the next part of the process, I've scrolled down a bit here to the personal short essay and the personal question video. So we'll talk about these as a pair. These are essentially essay prompts that you respond to. And the first essay prompt you replied to in a written format. And the second essay prompt you replied to in a video format. If you've applied to GSA before, these prompts have slightly changed, so take note of that. Please don't submit answers to prompts from last year. So for this written short essay, only 250 words, it's not terribly long. And what we're asking you to respond to is how can or why should the art form you are applying in be of importance to your community or society as a whole? And note that we are asking you to be specific to your art forms. If you're applying for more than one art form, we should see variation in your answers here. And then that personal question video, this is a verbal response to the prompt, why is the art form you are applying in important to you? What are your goals for yourself as an artist in this art form? Again, that's art form specific. For this video, you do not have to go out and hire a film crew. By any means, you can use one of these and you can be, sitting at home. We do recommend you find a quiet area where, you are well lit, we can see you. Again, in these videos, we want to get a sense of who you are. So let us see you as a part of that. Gaddie, I'm going to turn it over to you for these written short essays and these video essay responses. Do you have any tips or thoughts to share?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, and we'll get into this later, but this whole application process is really beneficial to students as an exercise and kind of what you're going to be doing for the rest of your life. And I think the most important word to use with these two is succinct. Make sure that you say exactly what you're trying to say without saying a whole lot extra. And then that way you can really nail down exactly the kind of verbiage and adjectives that you're really trying to drive home, and kind of come up with a point, an overall objective, and try and drive that point home. You've only got 250 words, so you can't get off kind of on a tangent, and you've only got 90 seconds. So definitely with your 250 word max, go through that and work that. Get that 200. I mean, when you turn that thing in, it'll be 249 words. And that 90-minute video, you might want to write down kind of a script for yourself. Now, we don't want to see you like read it, but you should have kind of a general script, and then make sure you use that full 90 seconds up to its maximum potential. But being succinct, I think, is the real clear that. And make sure, if you've got somebody to help you with it, have them read it and edit it and give you feedback on it, and then do your video with somebody, record it, send it to people, send it to other people in your school, send it to friends, parents of friends, and have them give you feedback on it. and so that it's as polished as it can be before it gets to us. And then the other thing, the other word I would use is just honest. Just don't try and be anything you're not, because you want to get in for you. You want to come sit in that classroom and be 100% confident that we chose you for you. And like I said, this is the all-star team for the art, and we're trying to mix and match a lot of different personalities. There's not one kind of student. I can't tell you what the secret sauce is for this, but we'll have some, we'll be looking for some high energy students who are a little bit more outgoing, and we're going to be looking for some quiet, more reserved students to kind of balance that out, and students from here and students from there, and just make sure that you're 100% like that. This is the best representation of who you really are.
Yeah, absolutely. And a couple other things I'll add in there to augment that is, authenticity, I think, is another great word. It's, connected to honesty, of course, but don't tell us what you think we want to hear. We get that these are kind of big questions, right? And they are intentionally vague and kind of big because we want to see people take them in a lot of different directions. And that direction for you is the direction that you want to take this question. So don't feel like you have to, solve world peace with your answer or anything like that. But just tell us something from the heart that's going to help us get a little sense of who you are. Because authenticity is pretty memorable, more than I think we remember students more often from these responses because they're authentic more than we do because they blew our minds with some new like legendary artistic concept never known to man before. Don't put that pressure on yourself. None of us are doing that here. Just answer honestly and let us get to know a little bit about you. All right. Great. I'm going to go back to sharing my screen here. We're going to move on to, I'll briefly mention this part, the art form specific questions. This is a pretty brief part of the application. I think it's about 5, maybe 6 questions where we're just going to be asking you about your level of access to art classes in your school or maybe outside of your school, or what mediums you're most interested in. I really want to emphasize there are no right or wrong answers to these questions. Really, what we're trying to get at here is a little bit of a sense of what you're interested in and also what level of access to arts training you've had. Because here at GSA, we recognize for a lot of different reasons, folks from across Kentucky have very different levels of access to arts training. Some folks go to arts schools and arts magnets. Some may or may not even have arts classes in their high school. And we recognize that and want to meet you where you are. So when we look at your work, that information is going to help us contextualize kind of the level of training that you've had. So yeah, Gaddie, you want to chime in?
Yeah, I do. I want to say this is another place to just be like brutally honest about your background. Looking back on my application a millennia ago, whatever, I realize now that at some point during that application, I said that my school only had $8 a student for art students. That we essentially only had colored pencil. That was all we had. And that was true. And so I think looking back on that, because I was doing all these different things, maybe not with a whole lot of skill, but I was doing different sculptures and different things with whatever I could find. And I think that that's what the faculty saw in me, was just like, oh, it doesn't really have a whole lot to work with, but it's somehow finding all these different ways to express themselves. So I think it's really important. Having said that, if you've got a bunch of training and a bunch of background, there ain't nothing wrong with that neither. There's no penalty there. It's just, as we build this team, as I keep mentioning, and we're going to be looking for people with lots of background, people with not much as background. We're going to try and build all around to really represent the state as best we can. This is another place where we go to like put all the pieces together of like what this team is going to kind of fit together and look like.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're not trying to cut anyone out of the process with these questions. We're just trying to understand everyone better. Awesome. All right. We're going to jump back over to the applicant guide. I see a couple questions coming in. That's awesome. We will get to those. Let's dive into the fun part, the portfolio images and files. So this is where we get to see some examples of your artwork. So let's talk first about the visual art portfolio at its core. You're going to be submitting 7 total pieces of artwork for your visual art portfolio as part of your application. I want to pause really quickly and point out that many of our visual artists applicants will also apply for architecture and design program. If you're not aware of our architecture and design program, it is really, really cool. I know we're here to talk about visual art, but hey, you can apply for up to 2 art forms. If you are really interested in any kind of design, our architecture and design program, it's definitely not just about building houses. In fact, I would argue that that's probably a minority of what we really talk about in that art form. But it's really more of a first like year studio, college level studio experience for anyone interested in design. We had a great webinar the other day about that. Check out the recording. If you do apply for architecture and design, the requirements do look pretty similar, but there can be some differences in there. So just make sure that you're reading carefully and looking at the details there. So just wanted to point that out there. But back to visual art and your 7 total works. We really break down these 7 total works into 4 required pieces and then 3 additional pieces. So for your 4 required portfolio pieces, we're telling you what these pieces need to be: an object study or a still life, a self-portrait, an environment also known as a landscape, and then finally a 3-dimensional piece made from recycled and or found materials below. So we're going to come back to that in a moment. So of these 4 pieces, one of them must be in graphite pencil only. A variety of any other wet or dry media can be used to complete the other required pieces. Your self-portrait can be 3D if you're really into 3D work, as long as it's done from direct observation. And if you do submit a 3D self-portrait, we want to see still a separate 3D piece for that 4th bullet above. And for these pieces, if we're looking for drawings and works that are not from photographs, but really are from direct observation. So working from photographs may not be substituted for any of these 4 required pieces. Also, we're not looking for digital illustrations or photography in these 4 required pieces for the object studies, self-portrait, environment, or the 3D piece. For that required 3D piece, we've just got a bit more information here about it. I love this language. It gives you guidance, but leaves it intentionally open-ended for you all. So we're looking for you to make something beautiful, meaningful, and or useful from items that others might only see as trash. So these are recycled materials like cardboard, paper, plastic bottle, old clothes, natural materials. It can be wearable art, freestanding sculpture, or the outdoor envisioning of space. Again, you don't really need to go out and purchase art supplies for this. It is intentionally vague and open-ended, and we're more interested in learning how you creatively solve problems and navigate limitations than we are in seeing a masterpiece. So spend time with the material, experiment, make mistakes, be open to scrapping ideas and starting over and create something out of nothing. So we'll talk about the 3 remaining portfolio pieces in just a moment. But Gaddie, for this object study and still life, self-portrait, and environment landscape, and that 3D piece from recycled materials, anything that you would like to share about those?
I mean, I think that this reflects my earlier comment about this being a really classics foundation program. I think these choices of these 4 required pieces, particularly working from life, really reflect that philosophy that if the ground is good, the groundwork is good, everything can be built on top of that. And so we require these pieces because this is, with a reflection of exactly how you're going to kind of respond to the program at large. Particularly the one that seems to hang everybody up is the 3D recycled project. And I'll just tell you like it is. I mean, we have a good budget at Governor School. I think it's pretty generous, but it's not like endless. We're not going out and carving big pieces of marble, that's for sure. So some of the material, a lot of the materials we use, that's how we kind of acquire them. They're we call it the store, but it's essentially kind of a big collection of odds and ends. And it's amazing how every year we pull really powerful pieces out of kind of what other people would consider trash. But I think there's real power in that. And so these all reflect all those aspects of the program.
Awesome. Thank you, Gaddie. All right, so let's pop back over to our applicant guide and look at the remaining 3 pieces. This is pretty open-ended. You all get to make, again, some choices here, right? This application is an invitation to you to make choices and for us to learn about you through those choices. So the remaining pieces can be selected by you. We're not going to tell you what medium or style they need to be in, but we do encourage you to include a variety of mediums and subject matter. If your remaining 3 portfolio pieces are derived from another work or photograph, please also submit an image of that reference material. And if it's that reference material is from another artist, be sure to credit them. So again, you're digitizing these images. Whenever you're submitting images of 3D work, please submit up to 3 images per piece from different angles. So if you've got a 3D piece, we're looking for at least 3 images of it from different angles. Don't worry about putting your work next to a ruler. We don't actually suggest that. And just double check when you're uploading these images into Accepted that they're showing up in the direction, the orientation that you want them to. And then we've also got some guidelines here on tiling your files.
Can I talk about those pieces real quick?
I would love for you to, Gaddie.
Yeah. Okay. So here's the kind of the balance of everything. So we talk every year about kind of balancing what we call like the foundation with creative. And not that these 2 things are in any way diametrically opposed, but because of time constraints, sometimes we do have to make choices about which way we're kind of focused at the moment. And so I think that although and I've spoken about this, that we're kind of a foundations program, don't think that by any stretch we're stuck in the mud. I can get crazy too. I can make crazy stuff too. So and all the faculties that way. We can get funky. We can do wild stuff that's really super creative. So this is kind of where we're trying to leave that door open for those of you out there who are like, I don't do like boring pencil drawing that great, but man, I do mixed media. Awesome. So we recognize that not everybody's skill set is built a certain way. And so this is kind of that moment. And I would say between the 7 pieces, your challenge is to kind of show depth and breadth somehow at the same time. And I know it's kind of a possible task, but we'll talk a lot in the program about learning to live in paradox. That's what it is to be an artist. Sometimes we live as a paradox. And this is a kind of a paradoxical challenge. Depth, meaning I'm really, really good at certain things, but I'm willing to try a little bit of everything. And you got to find that balance. And that's kind of part of the challenge of this portfolio. That's it. That's all I got.
That's great. Thank you, Gaddie. Maybe we'll talk about that a bit more if we have time at the end. All right, then after you've uploaded this 7 images, we're also going to ask you to provide us with the portfolio cover sheet. So this is just a document that we use to kind of keep your work organized and understand what you've submitted in an overview capacity. So this is one document that will include each of the following pieces of information for each work. So we're just looking for a reference image of the work, just a small thumbnail of the piece. Again, this is just something for us to be able to see, oh yeah, this is the painting of the plant, or that clay sculpture that they submitted, so that we can just quickly reference it, the title of the work, the year of completion, the approximate dimensions, the medium, so if it's an oil painting or if it's a piece made from recycled materials, and then just a very brief description of your process for creating this work. And if the work is a collaboration, describe your role in the project. So Gaddie, I know that this is a great opportunity for folks to, help present the work to you all in a functional, helpful way. What feedback do you have for folks as they put together their cover sheet?
Yeah, I think the cover sheet is a place to spend some time, because I think this is, for us, this is the first, in the way that we do the Accepted, this is the first thing that comes up. So we have your your essay, and then we have your video, and then the next thing in the media is your cover sheet. And so if we're able to click on that and kind of see your body of work in total, it really gives us a really broad kind of snapshot of your work. And what's great about that is in one image, I can kind of maybe start to see some what I call a common hand. Maybe it's the way you handle color, or maybe it's the way you handle line work, black and white. Maybe it's you got to think about shadows. Maybe you got to think about, one year we had a student who did these beautiful pencil drawings, and in every one of them found a way to just put like one little splash of color. Like it was like a business person, but had a bird head and had on a red tie. And then there was another one that was a cat, and it had like a blue piece of string around its foot. Or so. I can't remember exactly, but when all those images were all on that one cover sheet together, it was like, whoa, wow, this character clearly has kind of like a way of seeing the world. So that if you can really get it down to one page where everything is kind of as large as it can be, so that we get all 7 pieces in one spot, I think that's really important. And then it actually helps us on our end to move a little faster, as we can click on individual things and go back, and it's just logistically, this is a place to spend some time.
That's great. Thanks, Gaddie. All right. And then finally, in terms of your image uploads, and this is one of my favorite parts, images of sketchbook pages and or 3D experiments. So we're looking for work in progress, sketches that you do to inspire yourself or explore your artwork. So we're looking for, again, current reflection of your creative journey, a visual documentation of your brainstorming or creative process. This can look like a lot of things. It can be drawings, experiments, photographs, collages, cutouts, written personal reflections on other kinds of writing or creative responses. So it doesn't, literally just have to be a sketchbook. These don't count toward the number of portfolio pieces you present. So this is in addition to the 7 portfolio images. And we are looking for 5 photos here, 5 photos of pages from your sketchbook or this 3D experiments. These don't need to be included in your cover sheet, and we've got some titling instructions there. Gaddie, this is a really interesting part of the process, I think. So tell us what you're looking for here, and as students are trying to consider what to submit, any advice you might have.
Yeah, I mean, I think this one is all about demonstrating your process and how you kind of organize your ideas. There's been a lot of times where, there were pieces that were solid. They were good pieces, but then when we really went into the sketchbook, we realized, boy, that piece was just, I see where you were going, and that piece was just one little choice away from being really dynamic. And so, keep in mind that we're working professional artists who keep sketchbooks and have a process for creating. I'm one of those people who, if I'm sitting at a desk somewhere in a meeting, people probably don't think I'm paying attention, because by the end of the day, my whole page is covered in doodles. Many of you are probably doodlers. My buddy Brian, who teaches with us, is an epic doodler. And oftentimes those doodles produce bigger pieces that sometimes don't quite hit the mark, but it's really nice to see. I see how that piece is formulated and edited and pared down or added to into the real piece, and it gives us just so much insight as to kind of your workload too. Sometimes people will submit sketchbooks that are just covered in sketches, and maybe the work is not all that profound, but you can just see all this student really needs is just a little bit of guidance to figure out how to get this from an idea and a wonderful sketch into a really polished piece of work that's ready to be hung in a gallery and move on to the next phase. Maybe they just haven't gotten that little bit of instruction that we're going to be able to provide.
Awesome. Thank you, Gaddie. And if you all have questions, feel free to add them in the Q&A. See a few there still. We'll get to those at the end. We're almost finished with our review of the applicant guide, actually. almost time to move into that Q&A section. So that is all that you have to submit for the preliminary round. The next part of the applicant guide, you don't have to worry about too much just now. It is, sorry, just one second here. It is about the final round. So if you are invited to the final round, that will again take place virtually on March 17th or 18th. And you'll just fill out a pre-review questionnaire and then go through a review of your portfolio that you uploaded. But I want to move on now to this criteria area. So criteria are literally what your application is being scored on. So if you were to look at what Gaddie was completing when he was reviewing your application, it would be each of these areas with scores underneath them. And what we do is we list the piece of criteria and then a description of what an ideal applicant would look like in that area of criteria. So I'm just going to read through these briefly. Use of formal art elements, use of design principles and sense of composition, technical skill, craftsmanship and sensitivity to materials and media, originality and creative voice, and dedication to art form growth and community. So we're looking for, how passionate you are about your art form, how interested you are in an experience like GSA, where we're, challenging ourselves towards growth in an immersive arts environment. So again, spend some time with this criteria, really do your best to look at your portfolio through the range of this criteria. Gaddie, in terms of what we're scoring students on and how we consider these criteria, what thoughts do you have?
I mean, I think the verbiage here is fairly accurate. The way that we do the application, we kind of look at a piece and we have those criteria and a numbering system, and it's just a general way to start to quantify, as unquantifiable as all this is, a way to start to quasi quantify some of these different elements, so that then we can just have a way of organizing these applications in a kind of a ground to then build from. And I think they're fairly accurate and pretty well worded. We've critiqued them and reworded them over the years, and I think they're pretty well with what we want them to say. And it just gives you something to think about as you're putting your portfolio pieces together, like, oh, this piece might be stronger in this way, or this piece might be stronger in this way. Maybe I've already shown that I'm really good with color and I want to do a little bit more with contrast or line, or this piece is really strong conceptually, but maybe I didn't pull it off so much like compositionally. Again, breadth, depth, paradox, there you are.
And something else I'll add on to what Gaddie just said is that these criteria are not weighted in any specific way. One of them does not count for more than another. Rather, these are scores we're giving to these specific areas of your application. And then we kind of zoom out and look at you comprehensively and consider all the other parts of your application, like the recommendations, your questionnaire, what you could represent at the GSA community and contribute there. Gaddie, is there something else you wanted to add on to that?
No, I mean, I think that's it. I mean, we kind of look at all this in the micro, each piece, and then have to look at it in the macro, the big picture, the 400-foot picture. Then we might go back in and look at it again. Then we might have to zoom out. Then we have to look at like who all is in the group and go back in. And I mean, it's a really exhausting, actually, process to trying to put together all these pieces that are really, in the end, there is no right or wrong. There is no black and white. There's only shades of gray. And I think that, truth and authenticity is the name of the game.
Well said. Jumping back over here, the final section that we'll review is that there is a tip section. Gaddie and I work on these and the whole GSA team here each year, just in terms of maybe some common pitfalls we might see in applications or some stronger choices that we really want to emphasize. So know that these are put on here thoughtfully, and actually they're pretty brief, so I'm just going to go through them with you all really quickly. So include work completed outside of school when possible. By showing your motivation to create work outside of what you're told or required by a teacher, you can better reveal your personal voice and dedication to growth in your art form. Incorporate recent work in your portfolio. Pay attention to presentation. Diversify your portfolio with a mix of mediums. Be prepared to talk about your process and present materials that represent a variety and depth of processes. If you haven't already, begin to think about what makes your work distinctly yours. And that doesn't necessarily mean it has to be, wildly different than everyone else's, but what makes it yours? Pay close attention to the criteria. And finally, remember that we're really excited to see your work. You all, we understand it takes courage to put your artwork out there to relative strangers to review, and just know that we're already on your side. As young artists, you are some of the most important people in society, and I'm not just sitting here saying that for my own good. It's truly what all of us at GSA believe. So we recognize by you going through the ambitious process of submitting your artwork that you're exhibiting courage, you're exhibiting ambition, and we really respect that. So we're already on your side. We're really excited to see what you submit to us. So we hope that helps embolden you to submit a really authentic application that you feel good about, and allows us to see you as opposed to what you think we want to see. Gaddie, before we move on to questions, I know we just talked about tips. Are there any kind of tips you want to emphasize? Maybe some things to look out for, some things to definitely do?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you could go back to the tip numbers here. Boom. Okay, so the last one, remember, adjudicators are on your side. We want you to do well, deeply. And if you could scroll up real quick, the third one down there is my desire to see you do well. Please respect your work. Treat it with the reverence that it deserves. And just as soon as you create it, start thinking about how you're going to handle it. Start thinking about how you're going to photograph it, and try your best to just really value yourself so much, and treat that work like it is going to go in the Louvre someday. It's not, but treat it that way. It's good practice moving down the road. And I think that when you put your best foot forward, you can kind of feel very at peace with, like, hey, I gave that everything I had. And just be mindful of distractions. Remember, we are presenting something in a visual language, and all those little visual elements that are distractions would be like somebody in vocal music trying to sing a solo and their dog's howling in the background. It's just, some of that just kind of gets in the way of us really having a pure perception of your work. So for me, number 3, especially with high school students who haven't kind of learned those lessons, really just start treating your work as respectfully as you can. It deserves it.
I love that. Thanks, Gaddie. And before we jump into our Q&A, I'll just point out that the final section here is an application timeline. So that's there for you if you need to review it. Includes the session dates for the summer, and then also where to reach accepted if you need tech support with accepted, and where to reach GSA if you need questions answered about the application process. So you all have been asking some great questions, and so I'm going to start going through some of these and hand them over to Gaddie, and I'll do my best to address all of them here. So Gaddie, we've got a few questions that I'm going to kind of lump together because I think there's a through line here. And most of them I think have to do with really like what type of portfolio are we looking for? What's the balance, right? So for drawing, is it divided between something, are we looking for something more cartoony or something more realistic is a question. Someone asked if we could see what you submitted for your visual art application, or if we could see examples of other visual art applications. Hold on just one second here. There was another question that I thought was interesting.
I got answers to all that.
Yeah, no, I know. Hold on just one second. Well, wait, no, maybe that is it. Yeah, so just kind of, are we looking for certain types of work versus certain types of others work? Oh, I think someone asked specifically if we should be, yes, should our portfolio have cohesive ideas and styles, or would you rather see a variety of mediums and ideas? So I think you see the through line there?
Man, I mean, here's the thing. Like, I give everybody lots of props for coming on here and being a part of this, and it's a great exercise. But let me dissuade you from what this was about. This in no way gives you the secret sauce. See, we live in a culture where everybody wants the kind of shortest way from point A to point B. And if somebody would just tell me the secret sauce so I can do that as efficiently as possible, then that'll be great. And I hate to break it to you, but there is no secret sauce. It's just not there. I could show you my portfolio, but that's my portfolio. That's me. That's what worked for me. And I had to be authentic in my skin in order to pull that off. And my suggestion to you is, doesn't matter if it's cartoony, doesn't matter if it's realistic, doesn't matter if it's 3D, 2D, none of that matters. That's all noise. What we're after is you, is what you bring to the table. And you got to find a way, and that's going to be true for the rest of your art career. You got to find a way to make you work in the world and be comfortable in your own skin. So using other people's portfolios to kind of try and find the secret sauce, I'd love to tell you it's going to work. It's not a bad idea, not a bad exercise, but it's not going to be 100%. So, like, are there public photo examples of pieces submitted? Well, we can't even do that because we'd have to go and ask everybody permission to use that piece. Just imagine this, if you will. I put on there, here is the perfect portfolio. I mean, would that not be such a stress reliever for everybody? Like, oh my God, all I got to do is a black and white drawing of a Coke can and a picture of some birds on a power line. Like, that's all I got. Oh, I got to do that. That is exactly what we would get. 100%. 400 drawings of Coke cans and 400 landscapes with birds with power lines. And that has nothing to do with your life in Pike County, living in your skin. That's what we want. Because the ultimate goal of GSA is to create connection through artistic expression and empathy through artistic expression. And we have to have our true selves bared to the world in order to do that. None of us can be fake. We all got to be there and be us. So that's the application. It's built that way. It's intentionally vague. I understand it's painfully vague, but it's not accidentally vague. We're trying to figure out how you figure this out without the secret sauce. Does that answer all of them and then some?
I think it's a good reflection. And I'll just reemphasize something that you said. It's not that we're hiding the secret sauce. It's that the secret sauce doesn't exist. So yeah, there's no one right way to do it. And really just look at a lot of the language that we're using in the guide, and also just show us what you think is the best expression of who you are as an artist, because that's what we're most interested in. A couple other great questions that came up. We do anticipate accepting 80 students in visual art this summer. It will be 40 at each session. That could change a little bit between now and the list going out, but we are anticipating about 80 accepted students this year in our double the size program. If you are accepted, there is a supply list that we do send out before the program. Gaddie, can you remind us of kind of how intensive that is or isn't?
It's pretty basic.
Yeah.
It's pretty basic. It's like a rag to help clean up, it's a couple, it's pretty basic.
And if that supply list was a hindrance to anyone attending, we would definitely find ways to work with you on that, as opposed to saying, sorry, you can't come.
There's nothing on the supply list that we don't supply. It just helps us buffer some of the stuff. If you got it laying around anyway, go ahead and bring it. you're going to be more comfortable with that material that you already know anyway. And like I said, a lot of y'all are going to have most of these are common items laying around, and it just gives us a little wiggle room in the budget. Like if instead of buying all your pencils, if you already got pencils, go ahead and bring them. And then, for example, we can buy latex rubber for casting in the sculpture studio, which you all are not going to have laying around because there's only like 3 places to get it from. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, thank you. Let me see here. I think lots of these we've answered already. You know, there do need to be thumbnails of every piece in your cover sheet. The 3D work can be wearable art, which jewelry is another word for that. For the 3D piece, does it have to be set on a pedestal, or are we allowed to have a 3D piece that hangs or comes out of the wall, etc.?
Yes. Yes.
All the above.
Yes. I like where you're, I like that you're thinking.
Let me see. Someone asked if they'll get critiques in their portfolios. You know, there are portfolio critiques at the summer program, correct, Gaddie? Yeah. And this person might be asking about the application process, and what I'll respond to there is, if you are invited to the final round, you do have that Zoom-based moment with your adjudicators, where you'll be getting questions about your portfolio. And something that unfortunately we don't do at GSA is if you don't get in, unfortunately we don't provide feedback on applications. We wish we could do that, but unfortunately just kind of the administrative capacity of that process is something we're not able to support. And that can be good practice also for your college applications as well, because that's often the case there too. But that is something that unfortunately we're not able to provide. Gaddie, how do we feel about animations being submitted? Yes.
We recognize, yeah, it's funny. We recognize that that digital media is becoming more pervasive every year, and we do our best to accept that work, and recognize that that's a lot of students are moving in that direction. So yeah, we welcome all that work. Having said that though, you know, that definitely falls into those extra pieces and not the 4 primary pieces, but yeah, for sure.
And whoever submitted that question, I hope that you're also considering our film and photography program as well. Animation is not necessarily something that is taught there, but it definitely, I think, would be something that our film and photo folks would be very interested in seeing from you. So maybe you would consider applying into art forms.
And that has happened. I just know from experience that film and photography kind of look at some of that animation stuff as like storyboarding, which is, you know, storyboarding is just like one little jump to directing, which is essentially what they do. They create little mini films. And so I think you need students who are really into that kind of animation and storytelling like that may want to lean into that a little bit and see if you'd be embraced by the film and photography program as well. Not that I love the idea of losing great students to film and photography, but everybody's got to do what's their best for them.
All right, if you're watching this, make Gaddie and the film and photography folks fight over you.
Yep. It happened.
It does happen. Just a couple other questions. If the person who's joining us late, this is being recorded, and we will be uploading a recording of today's webinar to our website. So the same page where you would have registered for this, we will have a recording of it there within the next, I would say, 2 business days. Someone asked for the 3 other pieces in the portfolio and the photos that you're supposed to submit. Those are photos. If you created one of those pieces in reference to another piece of artwork, we're looking for an image of that artwork. Or if you took a photo and needed a drawing from that photo, as opposed to direct observation, we want to see, also have you include that photo in addition to the piece of art you made from it. We're not necessarily looking for mood boards or things that inspired folks. Correct, Gaddie? That might be something that they want to involve in their sketchbooks, but We're not necessarily looking for just this is an image that inspired me as much as this is an image that I created the piece from.
Both could be possible.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
both could be possible.
And I would say that's a great example of where you can use your cover sheet to maybe contextualize that. If you're giving us a painting of a bird, but the photo that you're uploading is, an image of a hamburger, and you can use your cover sheet to briefly explain how this bird was inspired by this picture of a hamburger, which I might be surprised to learn I'm clearly not a visual artist.
I'm gonna give you a really great example of that. One year we had a student who had an oil painting of a young lady in a nondescript body of water. And it was an okay oil painting. It was okay. But in the reference photos and in the sketchbook and everything, it kind of laid out that this student had tinted. I'm not telling you to tint your pool. I'm just giving you an example. Had tinted the pool, set up lights everywhere, and taken a photo in order to get the reference photo to make this oil painting from. And for us, that sealed the deal. It was like, look at all of the process that this student had gotten to create this oil painting. The oil painting by itself was okay. The process to get there, amazing. And so that's where all those reference photos and that sketchbook, that's a really good example of how we look at all that. And we put that whole picture together, and we said, wow, if this student really was super skilled oil painter, imagine what kind of work they could make. We're trying to look for students who we can, really put a piece together for them and get them to that next place.
Awesome. All right, we just got 2 quick more questions, one of which I can easily answer. Recommenders cannot attach images to the form. That's a question we got via Facebook. Thank you for that. That is a text-based form, so you know. And the images are all submitted by the student. And then, Gaddie, I think this is a good question for us to end on. And it may or may not resonate with something you said earlier, but if that's the case, you can just reemphasize it for us. If we submit art of a character that we didn't personally create, do we credit the original artist / company that did create the character? And is that kind of submission okay?
I would probably go ahead and, just as good practice moving forward, give credit where credit is due to the character development. And that work is okay. It is okay. But man, how much more powerful would it be if that was your character? And that you had, and I kind of, again, with this is along the same lines with the digital work. I recognize that for whatever reason, character development is really popular with this kind of group of young people. In my time, we were all into comic books. Comic books were big in the 80s and 90s, and everybody wanted to be Jim Lee and Todd McFarlane. So I recognize that's kind of what you're seeing right now. But we definitely want to try and stress the creativity part of that and ask, like, how are you making this a deeply personal artistic expression that reflects you? And when those characters are well designed and have backstories and are part of a bigger world that you're building, and those illustrations, those character development pages are fully flushed out, and the landscapes and everything are flushed out in it, then that becomes an entire composition that then we recognize as like a finished piece. Where sometimes we get a lot of pieces that's character development that maybe is kind of just a character floating in the empty void. And not that that's bad, because sometimes that's enough, but in a lot of cases, it would really be helped out by like a kind of a larger context that we can kind of see your level of commitment to that particular genre of work. That would be like, I'm a ceramic artist, and it would kind of be like me making mugs, for example, coffee mugs, which I make, and then just like not firing them. Just I just make them and I don't finish them. The function of it is so for somebody to drink coffee out of. That's reference to the mug now. So for me, all the character development is all about storytelling. So tell the story, finish it off. That's just my 2 cents on that.
That's great. Well, thank you, Gaddie.
Okay.
And everyone, we're going to start wrapping up tonight. I just want to mention, I think that there will be a survey that pops up or gets sent to you when tonight is over. Please take that. It really helps us understand how well these are going, if they're serving you, and what we can do better for you. Also, just a reminder, reach out with your questions. If we didn't fully answer today, or the second this ends, you have another question pop up, please feel free to email us or call us, and we'll be glad to clarify things for you. So in closing, Gaddie, we've got, thanks, Carl. Gaddie, we've got some awesome young artists here on the Zoom tonight. What's one thing you want to leave them with? A piece of advice, an inspiring message?
Yeah, I mean, I want to reiterate that, there are no shortcuts. It's just a joy of and the love of the work. You have to love the work and making work and doing the work and all that. And when you have a real passion for the process, and we talk all the time that process is, especially when you're at governor school, it's process over product. Process over product. And I know it's like so kind of cliche at this point, like trust the process. But I think it's just so critical to keep that kind of as close to your heart as you can, because none of us, me included, Nick included, are finished works. We are all, in process, and each one of us is as broken and as flawed and as limited as any of you. We're just people too. But all of our brokenness and our flawed and our shortcomings and our limitations, all that is part of the beauty of what it is to be a human being. It'd be a boring place if we were all perfect and done and finished and made great work the day we first touched a pencil. I mean, that would be terrible, because all of the clawing and scratching and grinding and climbing and trying to get to where we're going, that's living. So kind of revel in it's kind of a beautiful thing you're getting ready to do, and we commend you for having the courage to do it. But I promise you, at the end of it, no matter what happens, it will not be time wasted, because all that stress and all that struggle to get this portfolio and put it together, when it's all said and done, you'll have been made better for it. It's there's no strength without a struggle. And wherever you get to where you're going, this is going to be one step in that journey, and just try and be real confident and secure in your journey. Don't get caught up and look into peripheries at somebody else's journey. That's not your path, and you can't see their path either. And I think it's just a waste of comparing yourself to somebody else is a waste of energy. They got to get to where they're going, and you got to get to where you're going. And you can't see their pitfalls and their curves and their mountains. You can't see that. You can only see yours. So, kind of walk your path, and just be as honest in where it is as you can be, and leave the rest of it up to us to put together the most diverse team that represents the state of Kentucky as we can put together. Notice I did not say the 80 best portfolios. I didn't say that. So we're going to try and put together the team that best represents the state of Kentucky. And what that means is an ever-evolving thing that we constantly work on. Nick, this application is every year it's tweaked. We work on it, try and get it a little bit better, a little bit clearer than it was the year before. And governor school is continuing to tweak and get better and we add programs, and we, you know, modify things and change schedules to try and get to a little bit closer to the best fit of ideal as we can. We're never going to get there. It's never going to happen, but that doesn't crush us into inaction. That's perfect way to end it. Your portfolio is not going to be perfect. Do not let perfect be the enemy of the good, and crush you, and let anxiety crush you into inaction.
That's
Do
beautiful.
it.
Thank you, Gaddie.
All right.
I love it. Yeah, so everyone watching this, know we believe you are artists. We know you are important, and we are your supporters and your advocates for this whole process. So please be in touch. Thank you for joining us tonight. We look forward to, oh gosh, we look forward to seeing your application and your artwork. Thank you for sharing it with us. Let us know how we can help you along the way. Thank you, Gaddie, for joining us tonight, and we will talk to you all soon. Have a great evening. Bye.